That said, we have a lot to talk about in the here and now, starting with this. It's official. The government is shut down. The Dems, they had a proposal to fund the government until October 31st, but their version had provisions to permanently extend enhanced ACA health insurance premium subsidies and restore nearly $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts. But that got shut down with no Republicans voting for it. Right, and then Senate Dems voted against a GOP bill to keep the government funded at the current levels for a few more weeks until a long-term spending deal could be reached. With that getting a vote of 55 to 45, though of course that failed to break the 60-vote filibuster. And it also was an entire side for, entire side against that was very close. So you had 3 Democrats joining Republicans and voting in favor of the legislation, and 1 Republican voting against. And all of this, it kind of felt inevitable because, well, there's often a lot of back and forth and everyone's concerned about the government shutting down. Like, especially here, it seemed like neither side was going to give in to demands. Because, well, Democrats, they said, we're not going to support any legislation that doesn't roll back Medicaid cuts and extend key Obamacare subsidies. You also had Republicans refusing to negotiate or make concessions. And so now with the shutdown actually happening, we've seen both sides continuing to point fingers at one another. And, while this
wasn't risk-free warranty. It was new. We are living in a cult of novelty. Companies want us to like new things, to buy new things, to crave new things. But the truth is that we don't like novelty. In fact, we hate it. According to the mere exposure effect, one of the oldest and most robust theories in the history of psychology, the mere exposure of any stimulus to you over time will bias you toward that stimulus. In English, familiarity good. And indeed, when you think about it, we seek out new songs. But the songs that we most reliably enjoy are those with familiar chord structures and timbres. We seek out new movies. But every year this century, a majority of the top 10 films in America have been sequels, adaptations, or reboots.
That shit, right? Convenient. I could grab it. It's right there. Awesome. So I'm doing my business. Grab a tampon out of the box, as one does. I'm kind of just sitting there. And I look at the tampon, and it has like a message on it on the wrapper on the outside. It was like motivational words. And I was like, oh, okay, cute. And I was reading it, and it said like, you go, girl. I was like, okay. I'm not even kidding about this one. It said, stretch yourself. That one I had a little follow-up question with, but okay. And then it also said like, kill it. Like, it was just, look, it was like little fortune cookie messages, but on the tampon. And the reason I'm saying this, well, first of all, I was triggered. I was like, what do you mean? Like, what the hell is this about? Who is this helping? Okay, this is not, I don't feel motivated because of my tampon. I just ruined a full set of Egyptian cotton bed sheets. I'm not gonna reach for the stars because my tampon told me to. No one was like, yeah, my life sucks.
That all women ought to benefit from and that men would benefit from listening to as well. Before we begin, I'd like to emphasize that this podcast is separate from my teaching and research roles at Stanford. It is, however, part of my desire and effort to bring zero cost to consumer information about science and science-related tools to the general public. In keeping with that theme, I'd like to thank the sponsors of today's podcast. Our first sponsor is Maui Nui Venison. Maui Nui Venison is the most nutrient-dense and delicious red meat available. I've spoken before on this podcast in solo episodes and with guests about the need to get approximately 1 gram of high-quality protein per pound of body weight each day for optimal nutrition. Now, there are many different ways that one can do that, but a key thing is to make sure that you're not doing that by ingesting excessive calories. Maui Nui Venison has the highest density of quality protein per calorie, and it achieves that in delicious things like ground meats, venison steaks, jerky, and bone broth. I particularly
have fatty liver disease, and 20% of teens have fatty liver disease. You only saw this condition in elderly alcoholics just a generation ago. We're destroying our human capital and obviously our budget from something we're being told is complicated, but it's very simple. And it's taken me many, many years to come to this conclusion. And as I have through, being inspired by my sister and other leaders in the metabolic health space that we can talk about, I look back early in my career, and I was raised with my sister kind of compulsively to get all the credentials. We're working for President Bush, working for, prominent politicians, Stanford, Harvard. My sister and I both went to Stanford, kind of going up the ranks. She became a doctor. I was, advising politicians and prominent food and pharma companies. And I think a lot of people, and I certainly was like this, kind of gets in that path and doesn't ask many questions. And reflecting back early in my career as I, worked in politics and then consulted.
Great to meet you. Thanks for doing this.
Absolutely.
So before we dive in, I'd love to tell you my goal here.
Okay.
I'm not going to ask you about valuation or AI talent wars or fundraising
Thank
or
you.
anything like that. I think that's all very well covered elsewhere.
It does seem like it.
Our big goal on this show is to cover how we can use science and tech to make the future better. And the reason that we do all of that is because we really believe that if people see those better futures, they can then help build them. So my goal here is to try my best to time travel with you into different moments in the future that you're trying to build and see what it looks like.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Starting with what you just announced. You recently said, surprisingly recently, that GPT-4 was the dumbest model any of us will ever have to use again. But GPT-4 can already perform better than 90% of humans at the SAT and the LSAT and the GRE, and it can pass coding exams and sommelier.
We've been doing this inventory for a while. We're going to keep going and keep listening. But there are some general parameters that I would say define our priorities at the new FDA.
And I would just add, I think one of the ways that you're soliciting these new ideas is by challenging everyone to challenge these longly held assumptions, right? And ask these tough questions, right? And so in this paper, you start off by saying, why does it take more than 10 years for a new drug to come to market, right? Which sounds like a simple question, but it's a really important one. And so what are you thinking about with some of these new ideas?
There is, by the way, a science to soliciting ideas. If you get people in a room with their bosses and you say, how are things going? What ideas do you have? They're like, things are great.
Yeah.
But if you get them alone and you give them anonymity and you keep it confidential with them and that you just let them open up, you start hearing amazing idea after idea.
Credit, he welcomed the debate. I also mentioned, given that he is a cardiac specialist and I am a family medicine doc, I would like to bring in Dr. Danielle Belardo, who is a cardiologist heavily focused on research surrounding disease prevention. In fact, she's on the committee that puts forth new guidelines aiming to decrease the number one killer of all of us, heart disease. Dr. Gundry again agreed, so here we go, the Checkup Podcast. Well, we're talking about heart disease prevention, and it's great to have two people who are passionate about heart disease prevention because for myself as a primary care provider, so many of my patients come in too late already with heart disease. And then we're focusing on trying to reverse that not just through medication methods, but also giving them some lifestyle modifications. And that takes a lot of work because currently the American standard diet is an absolute disaster. The things my patients are consuming, high ultra processed foods, very, very problematic. But Dr. Gundry, I'd like to start with you.